Hey everyone, before we start the show, I wanted to let you know that this episode is exclusively brought to you by Audible, the leading provider of audiobooks on the internet. 100 Words listeners can get a free book, absolutely free, and get an extended free trial. Go to audiblepodcast.com/100words. audiblepodcast.com/100words and get a free book. Here's the show.
This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. Here we are, beautiful day in Southern California, and I am bringing you another action-packed, or maybe just conversationally packed episode. I've gotten a few emails recently. For those of you that lose the irony of the name of the show, some people are like, hey, there's clearly more than 100 words in this show, hence the joke. I explained it for you. Hopefully there will be no more questions, which of course there will be. Anyways, the guest this week is Mr. Jordan Pundik. Pundik? Again, I never ask guests to pronounce their name for me that I'll get this right. But anyways, he is the vocalist for a band called New Found Glory, which most of you have probably heard in some capacity if you have been paying attention to independent music, because they are a mainstay. They've been around for quite some time. It's even funnier because Jordan married one of my close friends in high school. So it's such a small world. Anyways, more on him in a minute. Let's get some business stuff out of the way. Review the show. Pop on to the iTunes store, type in some sentences about the show if you're feeling generous, and then also drop some stars. That stuff is very, very meaningful, and I know I'm asking you to do a lot for the show recently, but, things are picking up, and I want to make this legit. I want to make this awesome. Pop on to the website as well, 100wordspodcast.com. You can email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I've gotten some good advice in regards to potentially changing up the song, so we'll see. I'm kind of tinkering around with the idea. Yeah, so that's the business. And then, of course, you'll hear some more about Audible later on. I'm so excited that they're on board. Anyways, I've been doing a lot of weird stuff recently. I know previous episodes I've mentioned that I'm doing like an MMA class, which is totally out of my comfort zone. I did rock climbing the other day, like indoor rock climbing. And for a person who is scared of heights, let me tell you, don't do that. But it was cool because I was able to conquer one wall and feel like I had done something pretty monumental because I was pretty high up. So the first wall that I tried to scale was I think they call it a level 10 wall. And it was so high up. Like, I got 3/4 of the way up, and then that's when I felt like I was having a panic attack because I looked down and just started to comprehend how high I was. And of course, I'm safe because I have a rope around me. I could fall, and nothing is going to happen to me. But it's that inherent fear of heights. So I backed off of that and went down, and then decided to tackle something a little more doable for me, which was a level 6, I guess, which is pretty much like the beginner. And so I did that, and I was like, yeah, I accomplished that. So it sounds so cliche, but the whole like facing your fear thing, I'd never really experienced that. I had done things that, I may define as scary in my life, but I'm not a daredevil type of dude, or I'm not a, extreme individual. So like confronting something like a fear of heights and being able to conquer it, and I wouldn't even say I conquered it because it's a work in progress, but it was very interesting. I don't know. I had to get that out there to all of you fine folk because, I feel like we're hanging out. So I want you to know a little bit about me as we go through this awesome journey. So anyways, Jordan from New Found Glory. I went down to his house in Oceanside, and we sat in his backyard and had a nice little conversation for just over an hour. It was great. I mean, Jordan, out of all the members, but, I know Chad the best, and then Jordan was kind of, he was on the periphery. And so Jordan, especially just because, as I mentioned in the intro, he is married to one of my best friends in high school. I was so perplexed by that, for one, and then even more interested in him as a person. So it was a great chat, and he just opened up, and I felt like he talked about a lot of things that he typically doesn't talk about in interviews. So, and that's kind of why you come here. Without further ado, here's Jordan, and I will talk to you afterwards. I know. Do you even view yourself as a musician in that?
No.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
I mean, I just like music.
Right.
And I started the band. Honestly, we started the band as like, well, we'll probably talk about this later, but we started the band for fun. Like it was a fun thing.
Right.
We were all kids in heart and loved hardcore. We went to Shy Loot shows. And that's when we met Chad. And,
Right.
And then we were like, it would be fun to just have a pop punk band because it was easy.
Of course.
And fun to just jump around and stuff.
Right.
So that's how it started.
Yeah. You're like,
I don't really consider myself like, this minor chord that I'm trying to whatever. Like,
right. You're like, I don't even know where to begin with that. Yeah. Anytime anybody, like, obviously when you travel internationally and you have to write down your profession, where you're just like, even if you are in a full-time band and like that is what you do, like I know most of my friends that are like, they're always like, I guess I'll write musician. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I have to, when we do like car stuff or whatever, like all this house crap, like it was all, I had to put that stuff down and it kind of like, I'm sure they're thinking like musician, yeah.
Yeah, look at this guy.
Yeah. What do you play at the Boards Crossing in Carlsbad on Thursday nights?
Totally. Sweet cover band, dude.
Yeah.
What do you do? Kiss? Yeah. But I remember seeing you guys probably one of your first times out to Southern California where you guys played. I think you were with Midtown at Coos Cafe in Santa Ana.
Yeah.
I think that may have been your first or second time. I think that was your second.
Is that place still around?
No, it's a bummer because that place was amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it might have been your second time because I think you guys randomly did like a quote unquote showcase at the Troubadour or something like that. Mm-hmm. I just remember because I was so on board. Now when I say was, like past tense, I currently am.
Yeah.
But I remember a friend of mine showing me the Fiddler Records EP and just being like this is awesome and like this is fun, like it's it's hardcore kids playing like pop punk.
Yeah.
And it was obviously at that time that wasn't widely spread. It was just kind of like larger bands play pop punk and that's it.
Uh-huh.
And so I just remember going to that show and you could have played obviously Gorilla Biscuits or Youth of Today or anything else like in the background and not have your music playing, and you guys, for all intent and purposes, were a hardcore band. And it was one of those things where it was like, I know that kids that like came to see specifically like Midtown, like didn't know what to do with you guys.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, whoa, these guys are pretty active. Like, did you guys have that impression initially where it's like people were kind of like that I wouldn't say disconnect, but people looked at you kind of like, whoa, these guys are like, like they're passing the mic. Like, what is all that?
We started to I guess, quote unquote, like break out
of
our small scene of like, I mean, because when we first started, we were the band we were like the pop punk band that was like on tour with Grade and Snapcase and like those bands. Like for some reason they just embraced us, and it was probably because of Chad,
of course,
his whole association. But even still, and then when we started to like play for more like, play with bands like Midtown and like the more of that world, of bands, like it definitely people were kind of
didn't know exactly
what to do.
Right, because I do feel like that was around the time where it was like
even still sometimes.
Sure, right. Yeah, it's like, and at this point people should have a pretty basic understanding of what they should expect at a New Found Glory show.
Yeah.
Even if you're 14, you're just getting into it, you'd be like, oh, like there's plenty of videos on YouTube, like But you yourself, you were born and raised in the East Coast, right? Where specifically?
I was born in Jersey.
Where in Jersey?
I was born in Englewood, New Jersey.
Okay, that's like northern Jersey, right?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Most Floridians are from Jersey.
Right. Why is that?
Because they like want to retire in old school, like New Yorkers, New Jerseyites.
Right.
Retire.
The whole snowbird.
Yeah. So my parents moved down to Florida when I was like maybe 4 or 5.
Okay.
So I lived most of my life in Florida, but then I moved to San Diego in like 2000.
Okay, sure. What was your family structure like as you were growing up? Because you have brothers and sisters as well, right?
Yeah, one younger brother and sister.
Okay. And why did your parents move from Jersey to Florida?
I think work specifically.
Okay. What did your parents do?
My dad was like he did art, like design, like art.
Okay.
For ad stuff.
Ad agencies and stuff like that? Oh, okay.
For a while. And I guess he did pretty well with that. But my grandparents, his parents had a fabric store.
Oh, okay.
A big fabric store in Miami.
Oh, wow.
So, like, they were pretty well-to-do at the time.
Sure.
When I was, from the stories I hear and the pictures I see.
Right. Yeah, the stories you're told. You're like, from what I understand, yeah.
And so, we came. My dad, came to help with that, but also do the ad stuff.
Okay.
So, and then the business went under.
Your dad's ad agency or the textile?
The textile.
Oh, okay.
Place.
Got it.
But we ended up staying in Florida.
Got it. And so that's at the age too where it's like you probably have no memories of Jersey in regards to,
just from photos.
Right.
I mean, there's a really cool photo I have of me and my mom, and I'm in a stroller, and she looks all like 70s, and there's like a whole wall of posters of like Bob Dylan show.
Oh,
it's like
amazing.
$10, like whatever. It's pretty cool. Even though I'm not that big of a Dylan fan, but it's just cool to see that,
Well, it's always
what
funny.
era it was.
Right, and it's always funny too, especially when you're a teenager and in your 20s. You know, you never view your parents as having a life.
Yeah.
You just view them as like, oh, these people have taken care of me.
Yeah.
But then when you see those snippets of just like, oh man, like they did stuff before I was around. Like it was just kind of, it opens your head up towards like, oh, that's weird.
Me and Mandy talk about that now all the time. We're like, remember when we were kids and like you heard your parents, like after you went to bed and you heard your parents were up, in the kitchen or whatever. Like, that's us now.
Totally.
And like, with us having kids, and it's so weird.
It is weird because I think, especially if this generation, when I say
feel like a dad,
right? And this is something I was going to hit on later, but it's like the generation that we are, because you're what, 35-ish? 34. Okay, yeah, I'm 33, and so the generation that we came from, in my opinion, like we were afforded the fact of like dream big. Do whatever you want. Yeah. Whereas like our parents were not, and this I'm generalizing, but they had to be like, you got to do this trade. You got to learn how to do something. Whereas like we're encouraged to kind of, do whatever we want. Like find something you're interested in, you're passionate about. Yeah. Where I don't think our parents were afforded that. So I think that gives us this weird ability to not properly contextualize what it's like. It's like, oh, parents, like, yeah, like I know what I'm supposed to do, but then it's like I don't feel like that. Yeah. Whereas, I mean, maybe our parents went through that same sort of like, I wouldn't even say identity crisis, but just like that shifting. I just feel like it's such a weird thing.
They had to have. They had to have gone through it because, from what I hear, like stories about what my parent, my mom was all crazy and going to the Who concert and this and that, and like. So it's like the same thing, but all my memories of them are like these figures in my life that molded me to who I am, and like,
totally
were disciplining me all the time, and
right.
And I'm like, I'm never gonna be like that.
Of course,
obviously we discipline our kids, but
right,
we try to. I don't know. Still, I just want to be his bro.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds stupid.
No, it doesn't sound stupid.
But it's not going to be like that. I mean, it will be to an extent, but
yeah, there's definitely there's like completely different levels of like intention, and I think I definitely don't think that our parents probably had the same sort of feelings that like that whole like man, like I just want to be friends with them for as long as I possibly can. Whereas the parents were like, well, no, like this is this was the way that we were raised, so we're learning from that. And I don't know, it's just a weird generational thing. Like especially I think between our parents' generation and our generation of just like how that all sits with us. Because I mean, a lot of people also have kids later in life rather than like some of our parents. There's like in their early 20s, they're just like that's what they did because that was what that was what was accepted in the general culture or whatever. I don't know. So, but did your mom work, or did she just basically take care of you guys?
Both my parents worked.
Okay. What'd your mom do?
She worked for a doctor for a long time.
Okay.
And then she worked in the OR for a long time.
Oh, wow.
As an assistant. Nurse assistant.
Like in the medical field?
Assistant. Yeah.
Sure.
And so she did that for a long time, till I was, in my teens.
Sure.
And then after that, she kind of started just doing at-home stuff and mom stuff.
Sure. And then, but the whole time of as you were being raised, and your dad also was just basically doing ad agency stuff still, and like sort of. Okay.
Well, he was. We moved around a lot.
Sure.
Also, but my dad, he was doing that stuff when I was younger, and then as he got older, he started to have his hand in other things. Like,
sure.
He was doing what's it called? It's like leadership seminar thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The Landmark Forum.
Of course. Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. And
I was forced to go to that stuff when I was like 16 and like trying to like,
Yeah.
What's my racket?
Right. Dude, it's so funny because I had I didn't actually go to any of those, but the label I used to work for, Century Media, my boss there he was super into that, and he was getting a lot of like the higher level employees to do it.
Yeah.
But it was like right as he was getting super into it, I left, and so but a lot of my friends did that, and they were. Yeah. like
he was a coach for a while, and he still does coaching now.
Yeah,
that's what he does.
It sounds like obviously that experience didn't speak to you. You weren't like, I'm signing up for this.
Yeah, I mean, I was like a teenager, like I did meet some really, and they were still my good friends.
Sure.
A couple of girls that their parents were friends with my dad, and they all sent them to the same thing, and it was like the four of us, like, so we were, it was going on, but we were all hanging out talking about Green Day and stuff, like
totally. You were like, we're not committed to this. Like, this is no offense to you,
15
Dad.
Or 16, like
and anytime your parents are going to introduce you to something that it's like, oh, dude, this doesn't interest me at all.
You're being 15 years old,
right?
And it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're sitting there from morning till evening,
right?
With like maybe 2 breaks, and it's like this whole thing, so.
Right? Yeah. It's interesting that you experienced that, and obviously it was not very many people.
I think I got I'm sure I got some things out of it.
Right. Yeah, but as I would say, you didn't apply yourself.
No, I wasn't the guy standing up and like talking about my whole life, and then crying because I just had an epiphany of like, oh, that's why I'm this way. Or
Totally. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think
I'm still trying to figure out why I'm the way I am. So.
Well, it's a constant work in progress. Mm-hmm. The whole landmark stuff, like, because not many people, especially like in the teenage years, get to have that sort of like immersive experience. Like, I mean, whatever, it can be like, like whatever, basketball camp or something where it's like they're spending the night, but it's like sometimes it's like it really it challenges you in ways that you're probably like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Like, I'm 15.
I think maybe if I went now, I would maybe get more out of it. Obviously,
sure, yeah,
as an adult with kids and stuff, but
right,
yeah. I don't know if I want to sit there for a whole weekend.
That's funny. And your siblings are older, or you're
younger.
Okay, so you're the oldest. You were the trailblazer, as it were.
Yeah, my sister is close to my age. She's 30, I think.
Okay.
My brother is 25.
Okay.
24.
Got it.
I can't remember. I don't know with that.
No, ages are always tough. Yeah. You're just like, as long as you're within
25.
2 years, as long as you're in 2 years, you're fine. No one's gonna be mad at that.
My brother was out here. He moved to Florida for work stuff.
Okay.
And he's coming back in April, I think, moving back.
Got it.
And he has 2 kids. And my sister has a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's got kids now in your family. Yeah. I'm sure your parents are stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your parents how did you find the way that you were raised, like, pretty, idyllic, as far as like, did your parents fight? Like, did you have any sort of like turmoil from that perspective?
They definitely fought.
Yeah. I mean, as in most relationships,
I remember some pretty big fights.
They're still together though?
No.
Okay.
But for the most part, like, everything was always circling around family, like, especially on holidays and religious holidays and things like that. And
were your parents religious as well? Like,
no,
did they have
just on the holidays.
Okay, right.
Jewish on the holidays.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. I guess being from Jersey, like, you have no choice but to have some sort of Jewish traditions from that perspective.
Yeah, and we were always either at, like, my dad has 2 sisters.
Okay.
My mom has a sister, so we were always at, like, the aunt's house, or everyone together.
Pretty big family then, obviously.
All cousins and everything.
So when were your parents divorced?
Probably 2004.
Okay, so this is like basically every kid was out of the house.
Yeah. I was already out here,
right,
living out here and stuff, and for a few years, and so yeah.
Because my parents were divorced when I was 3 or 4, so obviously I'm like you in New Jersey, you just have these told experiences.
Yeah.
Did it affect you, like, from the like your parents being like, oh wow?
I don't think, if I was talking to like a psychologist, they'd probably be like,
Yeah.
But I don't think so.
Right.
I think I was more upset I was more upset of how it happened.
Sure.
Than anything, like, more upset at my parents for letting it get to that point, or like not talking things through, or like whatever. Well, I mean, partially couldn't help. My dad is gay.
Oh, okay.
So that came out, and
but
it was this thing that it was an ongoing thing for a long time.
Sure.
My mom suspected, but he didn't say anything about it. So
right.
I was kind of upset at the fact that he didn't talk about it sooner.
Of course. Yeah, like he could have addressed it earlier in his life to be able to, like, figure out what that meant.
And I totally get, like, being a father and having kids, and, like,
that pressure's on you immediately.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, especially that generation.
Totally.
So I kind of get it, but at the same,
yeah,
it's just like this constant.
Totally. So that's a huge thing to obviously have unveiled, and like have, like, did you have, I wouldn't even say like suspicions, but did you have any feelings towards that? Or you're just kind of like,
I was kind of whatever about it.
Yeah,
I was like upset with how my mom, obviously my mom was pretty upset and everything.
Of course.
So that upset me, but But as far as like him coming out, like that doesn't really.
Right.
I don't care. It's like, 21st century.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I almost said 20th century.
Yeah, it's the 20th century.
I love movies so much. 20th century.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like it wasn't, and I was already on tour and like living out here on my own and
right
experiencing those things. So
yeah.
I was around that a lot.
Sure.
So.
Did you find yourself having to be a support for your mom or support for your dad, or kind of like both?
Kind of both, and not really knowing how to, because it was like this big separation on both of our sides of the family too. And
sure.
Stuff. And it sucked having to be in the middle sometimes, because they would always be like, your father's doing this or your mother's doing that. Or
of
whatever.
Course.
And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Just like, let's just
Right.
You guys figure it out.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a lot. No matter how old you are, it's a lot to put on you, especially when it's like, because they're essentially obviously the relationship they had was clearly dissolved, but it's just like it's both of them figuring out where they sit in the world now, and then they're having to put all of that insecurities on their children and being like I don't know where to go. Yeah. So that's are they both in better places now? Or are they still kind of in works in progress as you feel?
They're definitely both in better places for sure.
That's good.
My mom was remarried a couple of years later, and my dad's been with the same person for a long time too since then.
Yeah, sure.
So they're both doing good. They're both back in. My dad was in Tampa for a while. He just recently moved back to South Florida.
Okay.
Going back to Miami.
Sure.
So all that for him is cool because he's back near his parents and
of course
his sisters and stuff.
Right, the support system.
And my sister and brother and everything.
Right. That's cool. Well, it's a traumatic experience, but ultimately it obviously gives you, you and your family a perspective that you normally never would have had. Like you would have just, you would have heard about it like a story of a story and been like, oh, that seems rough.
Yeah.
And it's like, whether or not you felt like you handled it appropriately, like, at least I know what I've gone through now.
Yeah.
Once you started to kind of, develop into your own person, like, high school and all that sort of stuff, what sort of kid did you find yourself being? Like, sports, music, like, how did that all
I was in marching band.
Really?
For a long time, yeah.
Playing what instrument?
I was playing tuba, sousaphone.
Dude, that's brutal.
Yeah, it was super brutal. Like band camp and stuff sucks.
Yeah, you have the most heaviest, biggest piece of equipment that is. I've never been in a market for tuba, but I presume it's expensive.
It was you got.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So I never had to. I had like mine from class, from class.
And just your own mouthpiece, obviously.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
my own mouthpiece I had to buy.
Of course, I played clarinet for a year, so I know we always had my mom had a clarinet, so I had no choice. But she was just like, "Oh, here, I'll give this to you." But not even like I have asthma, and she's giving me a wind instrument, and I'm just like, "What are you doing?" Like in retrospect, but yeah. So anyway, I always know the reed and the mouthpieces are always obviously such a big deal. Like, oh, you're gonna have your own. Like that's disgusting. So tuba, how many years did you play that?
From like 6th grade till like right before it was junior year.
Okay. And did you enjoy it at all? Elements of it?
Yeah, I
sure.
enjoyed elements of it. I got some cool, some good friends out of it and stuff.
Sure.
Ones that I haven't spoke to in a long time, but, we're like Facebook friends.
Of course, yeah.
Which I don't know how
Facebook, the way that I describe it, and I think it's it's very apropos of that social network, it's friend cold storage.
Yeah.
Where it's like you put people there and you just like, you occasionally like, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Cool. You seem like you're doing all right. You haven't deleted your account. Like, that's when I know I'm like, oh, you're making a statement when you're doing that. So yeah, you're okay. You have your Bandcamp friends. Though. Yeah, of course.
And for me, my Facebook is for just close not mostly close friends and family.
Of course.
And then there's like the
Then there's the different
friends.
levels where it's like, okay, here's my public my public things that I can share.
Yeah.
And so Bandcamp. Like, did you do sports? Like, what else?
No, I played soccer for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like every preteen.
Of course.
Or that or baseball. Or something.
Right. Yeah. Some sport.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was mostly like my through middle school and on was band. Was
band. And was that through the influence of your parents that they were like, you should do something like this, or just kind of?
I think it was. I was in 6th grade, and it was band class was a class you had to take.
Right.
And so I remember Mr. Williams, and he was 7 feet tall. He looked like Michael Jordan, bald head and everything.
Wow.
And he was going around the room first day, and he's like asking everybody what they think they want to play.
Okay.
And for some reason, he comes to me and he looks at me and goes, tuba. And I was like, okay. I wanted to play like the quads or like the drums.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Right.
Something fun, but then it just stuck with me, and
that's amazing. He is choosing your destiny. Where it's like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
It's like in Harry Potter and like the sorting hat, where it's like, oh, here's the.
I probably if I didn't get into like punk rock and stuff like that, I would have probably pursued that.
Right.
That and
do in college and everything like that. Yeah.
Because we played the football games and everything, and
yeah. I mean, it's like that atmosphere. I mean, it's fun. Like it's fun to be a part of, because it's like you feel like you're a part of this like weird, well, not weird, but like this clique where it's just like, like we're here, we're kind of weird, like we're in band camp, we're weird, and so
band kids are weird.
Totally.
Back then, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that trope still rings true today as well. But yeah, but then you're forced upon these like social activities and like social events that you're just like, well, I don't think I would go to a football game necessarily, but I'm here. But
it was funny because honestly, like if I wasn't in band, I don't think I would have gotten into the things I got into.
Right.
Because that's where I met certain friends that got me into that stuff.
Sure.
Into going to shows and punk and whatever.
Right.
Older kids.
Sure.
Seniors.
And that was going to be my next question, because it's always interesting. I always find when I've had these discussions with people in regards to like finding out about independent music, it's usually like older brother, older friend, but it's like obviously you couldn't rely on older siblings. You were that older sibling, and so it's like you it was just the friends that you were in with band camp that kind of like you guys all started to dive into the. What was the intro points as far as that's concerned?
As far as what
like independent music. That's one. I mean, besides like because obviously I presume that grunge was obviously a huge thing
Nirvana
for us
and stuff.
Right.
But then I was able to dive a little deeper because these friends were into cool music. So I think the first bands that I started listening to was like Dinosaur Jr., and then from Dinosaur Jr. it was Shudder to Think, and Shudder to Think into Sam I Am, and
sure.
And so that's what they're all into. Like, I remember my friend Rich, he would always wear a Sam I Am shirt.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? Like
right,
Sam
right.
I Am, like Green Eggs and Ham. Or
right.
And I got into Sam I Am because they had they had a lot of records on, was it Red Archives or
New
Red Archives?
New Red Archives, yeah.
But then they had that major label one, and that's the first one I had gotten into because I was obviously too young for the other stuff.
Of course, right.
So I got Clumsy, and then saw what bands they thanked and looked up them, and then my mom loved these,
I was gonna say your mom
friends.
I was also gonna say like your mom obviously also seems to have like a love for music as well. So,
But my mom loved it was Rich and Jeremy were two older friends, and they both had mohawks and like smoked cigarettes and stuff, and
they were edgy.
And but my mom liked them, and she would let me go hang out with them all the time, and they would,
because I presume they were probably they were probably just super nice to your mom in general, because she seemed cool.
They were nice. And I remember them taking me to a Queers Pink Lincolns show for like $5,
That's amazing.
Whatever venue.
Right. VFW Hall, whatever. Yeah.
And then from there, it just, snowballed into more.
I always find it so funny, too, when it's like I feel like, if there's ever a piece of advice that I feel like should have been shared to me, because I feel like I treated my parents with, like, respect, but it's like, when you, as a teenager, like, make your life difficult in regards to, like, whatever, either, like, get absolutely terrible grades and, like, do all these things, like, have a contentious relationship with your parents, you're limiting yourself.
Yeah.
Just be nice. Like, your friends, where it's just like, dude, they may have looked fucking crazy, but they could sit there and be like, hey, we're cool.
And that's the thing, like, I think that's exactly what you're saying. Like, I was, to some would consider a mama's boy, but I think that I was just respectful of what they wanted from me.
Sure.
You
understood where they were coming from. Yeah, as much as you could.
Because it allowed me to do whatever I wanted, for the most part.
Right.
If I came home if my mom said be home at midnight or, whatever, 12:30, I'd be like, okay, and make it a point to try and be there at that time. You know, and some of my friends, there was a couple friends that were like, no, I'm not taking you home yet, I'm like, come on, I got to get home.
Right.
And there was times I would be late and stuff, and they wonder why and whatever, but for the most part, I was...
Yeah. a good kid from
Good
that.
kid, yeah.
Right. Which, I mean, I think that affords you more, life experience and opportunities to do fun stuff where it's like, oh, yeah, because I'm not restricted in all these other areas.
Yeah.
And so then as you started to, dive more into the rabbit hole as far as music is concerned, did you immediately have that, like, dude, like, I got to play in a band. Like, I think playing in a band is perfect. Okay. Immediately.
Yeah.
And did you...
Especially that kind of music, like that kind of band, I was like, just the energy and just the, the camaraderie.
Right.
And stuff. And I remember we'd go to shows all the time at this little record store called Echo Records. And there was like, basically like the length of a hallway.
Sure.
And it was like this like skinny little like ratty dude that owned it, and he was always letting people just hang out on the couches in there and talk about punk and stuff. And it was a total punk rock in a strip mall, total punk rock record store.
Sure.
We'd have like one of like, the new
Madonna or whatever. Yeah.
Not even. It was literally like have like one like Minor Threat sweatshirt hanging up.
Oh, okay.
It was like all dusty.
No one would ever buy it, right?
No one would ever buy it because it was like an extra small or something. And then like you'd have like, oh, the new Zoinks record came out. Okay, so it'd be like from like Dr. Strange Records. Then it'd be like one.
Right.
So you'd have to like pre-order it like at the store. And
totally. Yeah. Tell them I really want this. Can you please get this in?
Yeah.
Rather than
so we'd always but he would always clear out everything and he'd have shows like no stage or anything. The band would set up at the end of the hallway, kind of because it was like a rectangle shape.
Right.
At the back. And that's how I got it. Like, I saw so many cool startup,
Sure, yeah. Pardon the interruption, people, but I am here to talk to you about Audible. It's an amazing service, and the fact that they've decided to partner up with us, it's even more exciting because they're just like, hey, let's work with this podcast. And I'm like, of course, I would love to. They have 150,000 audiobooks of every genre possible. Mystery, biographies, science fiction, nonfiction, you name it. There is something that is of interest to you in their library. You can listen to it on your iPhone, you can listen to it on your Kindle, you can listen to it on your computer. You name a device, they have a way for you to listen to it. It's awesome. And it's like, most books are between like 5 to 7 hours. So it's great for a road trip. So many awesome things. And here's the best part. I am giving you a free audiobook. Visit audiblepodcast.com/100 words and you can get a free book. And when you do that, it supports the show. You can check out this amazing service, and Audible goes, hey, we've got a lot of traffic coming here. We might invest $1 million into this podcast. Let's make it happen. And I want to recommend a book that I have read paperback form, but you don't need to do that. It's called I Want My MTV. It is the uncensored story of how MTV came to be. I mean, most of us that are over the age of 25 realize at some time, hey, MTV actually played music rather than the reality show glut that it's at right now. This is an amazing story of how basically these people had no idea what they were doing and became a phenomenon. It's a really, really compelling story. You can get it for free. Visit audiblepodcast.com/100 words and just get it for free, please. Now here's the interview. I think the epiphany, what always gets people like as involved as we have been with independent music is once you start to notice that it's like for one, this is doable, like as far as either playing in a band or like participating, and then feeling like, oh, like there's a like a scene, you know, there's people that come to this regularly, and I can be part of that. And like that's when it's just like, oh, it opens up. And so the first attempts of you trying to get a band together, were you like, I want to sing, like had that?
No, I just wanted to play guitar.
Right. You've always struck me just in the, in watching you play over the years. It's one of those things where it's like you're comfortable on stage, like there's no disputing that.
Yeah.
But for lack of a better term, like a reluctant frontman, where you're like, oh yeah, like I can get up here and I can do this and it's enjoyable for me, and like especially just like when you first started, it was definitely like I'm getting my feet wet. I'm kind of seeing where things are at. Like this wasn't my first choice of like, God, I can't wait to sing for a band.
Singing sucks, man. It's hard.
It is hard. Whether you're singing, whether you're screaming, whatever it is, it's
screaming too. Like unless you're inward singing, inward screaming, like a lot of bands do now.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
it's the worst.
I distinctly remember, and I won't name the band because I think that it's a friend of mine. But I was recording, and the guy that was doing the stuff for us, I always was very loud. And he would always be like, oh, he had the settings from the last band that was in there. And he was like, dude, do you want to hear how quiet they are? Like, and so he showed me, and I'm like, because the inward scream is totally just like, it's like, It's so quiet, like when you're actually yelling, where it's just like, oh, it's outwardly projecting, and it's just like I remember him playing it for me and just being like, what? People do that? That's crazy, because it works for them, because they don't need to worry about like playing a crappy whatever 50-person PA system. It's like no, they're in a place where they can make sure they sound really good. So singing was never part of the plan originally.
Not originally.
Yeah.
But I did always sing, but originally I just wanted to play guitar.
Right. I presume you had a guitar throughout the
I
duration.
did. I had like a Series 10 with like stickers all over it.
Of course,
stuff,
yeah.
And like a Gorilla amp, a little mini amp.
And I love.
It's all like farty sounding. And I had a grunge pedal too.
Oh, of course, you gotta have grunge, metal zone, whatever.
Metal zone, yeah.
Either one of those is like completely a starter kit.
Uh-huh.
And then I always love it how you have to you put every sticker you've ever had on it.
Yeah.
Even if it's bands, you're just like, I'm not that into it, but it's a sticker.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where else it's gonna go.
Didn't snip the strings at the top and
totally. That's perfect. And so what your first attempt at putting together a band? What was that?
That was kind of.
Was that the stuff that you and Ian were doing? Okay.
Ian wasn't until later.
Yeah.
It was probably Rich and myself, my older friend. We would hang out in his room, and he would have a guitar, and I'd have a guitar, and we'd hash out like weird songs and stuff, but we didn't have a drummer or anything.
Right.
So that never panned out. And then like after him, my friend Joe, who I still in contact with some once in a while, but he wanted to start a hardcore band.
Okay.
So I played guitar in his hardcore band.
Okay. Was that and
we played one show at a coffee shop.
Perfect. That was my next question. Where it was like that was your first live show.
But he had already had the band started.
Oh, okay.
So they had played like maybe 2 shows or something.
Okay. And then you were able to kind of plug in as the second guitarist?
As second guitarist. Perfect. And I only could remember 3 songs, so at the coffee shop I played like 3 songs and like got off stage.
I love how that stuff was normal. Like just the idea of being like, I remember like in my first band Taken, where it was like we would have the drummer and guitarist switch occasionally because one knew how to play, and we're like, who does that? No one quote unquote professional does that.
It was there was probably already a band, but it was X Unfaulted X was our name.
Oh, that's spectacular straight edge. I presume straight edge,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, we were at the time.
Yeah,
not anymore.
Right.
I think you're the only one I know that's you and Chad are the only 2 straight edge.
We are definitely a dying breed. It is not especially once you reach I think 30 plus. That's when you're just like, whew. It's lonely up here.
No, that's not true. Toby from H2O.
I know, true. Yeah, there are always exceptions, but it's definitely like you feel. I think it's around. People obviously always cite 21 as being a huge drop off. I believe that it's the 22 to 24 range that I see kids where it's like that's when you, for all intent and purposes, you start to feel like an adult where it's like, oh, I'm either out of college and like I got a job and like. That's when it's like real life comes at you and you're just kind of like, oh, I don't know how to cope. Like, what? I gotta do these other things or whatever. It's like, it's definitely an interesting thing, kind of trying to trace. Where it's like, oh, I can see why that person did that because they had 5 terrible deaths in the family. Oh, that's an awful thing to experience. Yeah. And so, but the moment you played second guitar, it was like this is great. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you interested in like studies in high school? Like, were you like, oh, I can't wait to go to college? Like,
I was a fair.
Yeah.
I didn't. I did what I had to do to like make it through.
Sure.
But I wasn't like, I want to get an A+ tomorrow on this test.
Right. I
kind of like studied like the morning of kind of thing, and
sure,
I would scrape by.
Right. Did you have?
I had B's and C's.
Okay. Did you have ambitions to like attend college and everything like that? Or did you actually attend college?
Yeah, I went to Art Institute.
Oh, really?
For like a semester.
Okay.
And I went to Broward Community College for a semester.
Okay.
And I think that was just more of like because I felt I had to.
Sure. But Art Institute, I mean, that's kind of that was like a commitment.
I went and got like loans and everything, and
right. And what were you trying to study there?
I was going for like video games.
Oh wow.
And stuff.
Interesting. You were a big video game dude.
Yeah.
Like where was your first system, or what was your introductory points?
My first system was because I was like. I couldn't afford a Nintendo. Like my parents got me a Sega Master System.
Oh, that's great.
And I know if I had that thing now, I'd be so stoked.
So such
Alex
good games.
Kidd and Miracle World and like
so good.
All those games.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So that was my first one, and then from there I was able to. My grandparents when Super Nintendo came out, they had it at their house for like the little cousins. all the kids to play, but I was the oldest one.
Right.
And all my cousins were too young to even
Oh, yeah.
really play it.
Especially those introductory games. Like, not too long ago, I played Pilot Wings.
Yeah.
That game holds up.
Yeah.
Like, and you could totally see
Even
where
Super Mario World.
100%.
So good. But anyway, like
They're too young. They couldn't
were too young,
understand.
so my grandparents let me take the Super Nintendo home with me.
Huge.
And then yeah. It was
You're
my
like,
first,
great move.
I
Yeah.
didn't even have the original Nintendo
Uh-huh.
until until I was an adult.
Right.
Like where I found it on eBay with like 100 games for
Sure.
$60 or whatever.
Right. I'm gonna relive my childhood here.
Yeah. And so we still have it. So I like made the jump from Master System to Super Nintendo.
Got it. But that's cool. But you were heavily influenced by the fact that you saw that there was a way to build these video games, and you wanted to kind of be a part of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I started Art Institute, it was right when PlayStation.
Okay. Yeah.
It was PlayStation, the first one, and
Sure.
You know, I was way into that. So.
Yeah.
And then the Sega Dreamcast,
Oh yeah.
and playing. What was that game we always play?
I never had Dreamcast. That was one of the only consoles I didn't have.
I do Power Stone.
Really?
So good.
Okay. Yeah. Never played
It
that.
was like a fighting game, like multiplayer, like Smash Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Super fun.
I always found myself investing in the video game systems that failed, especially like Sega CD. Do you ever remember Sega CD?
Yeah.
Like,
Super Shark and stuff.
dude, and there was a game called Night Trap. Still one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
Like, so controversial at the time, but it's like they made probably less than 100 games for it, and then I just saw the writing on the wall of just being like, "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry I made you buy this for like $400."
Have you ever with Sega Genesis? Did you ever play Techno Cop?
Oh yeah.
That was like pretty brutal
Great.
for the time.
Totally
like,
brutal.
Shooting, like you can accidentally kill kids and stuff.
Yeah,
and, like,
totally. Yeah,
it's
not.
crazy.
And I remember, I definitely remember always wanting a TurboGrafx 16, just for Splatterhouse.
Yep.
Just because I was like, oh, dude,
I had it.
It's so good. And at that time, so brutal.
Yep. Had Splatterhouse and Bonk's Revenge. And
Oh
stuff.
yeah, spectacular.
I wish I can still get those. You
I know,
probably
some-
can get ROMs probably.
I know that. Yeah. You could probably play it on your computer, but definitely never, not any cartridges or anything like that.
They were credit cards, like little.
I know they were. Yeah, that's true. As you started, playing in your first quote unquote serious band, was that the stuff that you were doing with Ian, like towards the end of high school and sort
Yeah,
of?
but we never played shows. Like that had that. I was in a band with some other with Steve
Yep.
Klein, which we never played shows either. We were just played shows and we played in the garage. you know.
Okay, yeah.
We were called Fallview. We were an
Okay.
emo band.
Oh, that name is perfect for a
Yeah.
band like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And our drummer like played us all spazzied, and he wasn't a good drummer, and he
Sure.
had a lot of his parents had money, and so I would play his Les Paul all the time. And this was right around the same time I met Ian.
Right.
Ian was already out of high school and stuff.
Okay.
And I remember breaking Shane's. His name was Shane. The
Yeah.
drummer. I broke the guitar. I fell over. I
Oof.
tripped on the cable. It was on the guitar stand. Tripped on, pulled the.
Sure.
I fell. The neck broke and stuff. And then I didn't talk to him ever again.
That's amazing. That I just exited his life.
Yeah. So, and then Steve was really mad at me. Like Steve didn't talk to me for a long time.
I'm sure.
And then he found out I joined Ian's band, Inner City Kids,
Okay.
and Steve was not having it.
Right.
So then,
So there was some tension there.
yeah. So then Inner City Kids needed a new guitar player because Mikey C left the band.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, and me and Steve started talking again and becoming friends or whatever. We became friends at
Right.
someone's party.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, what about my friend Steve? So Ian's like, yeah, sure, let's try him out.
Right.
Let's have a try.
Yeah, let's audition. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what
I
it was.
love the audition
Yeah.
idea, yeah. Where it's like, we're not professional enough to be calling this an audition.
Yeah.
This is just like, let's show up and see if we get along.
Yeah.
But what do you call that?
So Steve came out and came to Ian's house, and
Uh-huh.
Ian had Steve come over, and the first thing Ian says, hey, whatever you do when you go in my room or whatever, just don't play my guitar. Don't touch my guitar. That's the first thing Steve does.
I love that. He's
grabs
like,
the guitar.
yeah, don't.
Yeah. So from then on,
Yeah.
they had this
Butted heads.
butted heads, but he was in the band, and then it obviously became what it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's hilarious that just don't do that. Immediately goes and does that.
My favorite, though, before that, I was friends with a couple of guys from As Friends Rust,
Oh, sure.
and so I was friends with Henry and
Damien? The
not
singer?
Damien.
Okay.
I just knew Damien
Like
from just
through.
going to shows.
Yeah.
But I wasn't friends with him.
Right.
But it was me and our our guitar tech, who later became our guitar tech, Steve Looker.
Steve Looker, yeah.
Steve was friends with Henry and all the Bands Friends Rust guys and stuff, and we had started a little bedroom band together.
Okay.
And I was like, man, I wish those songs could have.
That those would exist.
Because like I was already singing in Newfound Glory, but we were still a local band.
Sure.
But then I was becoming friends with all these other cool bands and stuff, and
Right.
we did like fast like Lifetime style songs.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like,
fun.
I wish those are.
Looker was playing guitar, and Henry, instead of guitar, was playing drums, and
Yeah.
it was cool.
Sounds like a fun thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Never turned into
Right, ever. As in a lot of those things where it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that would be fun to play, and then if you actually get to the playing stage, that's when it's like you've already felt like you've accomplished something.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, we got all this in the same room, and this is happening. I definitely remember when Newfound Glory started to tour and started to, like you said, exist in a larger world. At the time, the idea of like bidding wars and like bands getting hot, like that was still a relatively new idea. Because I mean, bands prior to you guys, obviously, it's like once the whole like Get Up Kids and Promise Ring, like once that was like oh fuck, Get Up Kids are like Teen Vogue, and you're just like, what? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But then I definitely feel like you guys were just like you were right behind that in the sense of that a lot of people started to pay attention to like the Newfound Glory can be a commercially viable product, especially like from the sense of like once Drive Thru obviously picked you guys up and started to push you guys out there. When for you did it feel like, because I'm sure all along the process you were just like, this is weird, I don't understand this, like when for you did it become like kind of a real thing as far as like, wow, this is going to be the next foreseeable future for me, or whether it was just like
I think it was definitely when Drive Thru came into the picture.
Yeah.
Because we had our records, we had the Fiddler Records EP.
Right.
And, she helped us out with stuff in the
Of
beginning, Amy. And then John Wiley, when he owned Eulogy,
yeah,
he put out Nothing Old Could Stay.
I got that OG pressing.
Yeah. I think there's only like 2,000 press.
I know. Yeah. That's eBay Gold eventually.
Yeah. But it wasn't until Drive Thru that really like when they came to see us play a pool party in Florida.
Okay.
And a skate park. So it came to 2 shows because they got our Nothing Old Could Stay record from Midtown.
Right.
And like, you guys have to listen to this, whatever. So they came to see us play in Florida, and I think it wasn't until then where we really were like, wow, this could actually be something. Like, they're a real label.
Right.
I never had heard of them. I just knew about Phoenix TX because of
Right.
they were opening for Blink a bunch.
Of course.
Stuff.
Right.
And I'm still Willie's one of my best friends, like the singer.
Sure.
Even now.
Right.
Today. And so that's the only thing I knew of Drive Thru. And I knew they were like they were in California. And
Yeah, you're like, we're in Florida, this is weird. Yeah.
So they came out and they're like, if you guys want to make this happen, like you got to go on tour, and we'll help you guys out with a van and this and that. And we're like, wow. So we were all still.
Yeah, how old were you at the time? Like when that was early 2000s? So
2000.
Yeah. So you were
No. Yeah, early 2000.
Yeah, because you were like 20. So yeah, in your most of you were in your 20s.
Yeah.
Or
99, 2000.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had a meeting, all the parents and Richard and Stephanie.
Really?
In my living room. And I remember Ian's dad was like, if you leave and you don't go to school or whatever he said, he's like,
Right.
I'm taking your fucking car away. I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And Cyrus, our drummer, had like a full ride to the University of Miami, like scholarship, because his dad, was big in the medical field there.
Sure.
So we were like putting a lot of things that on the line for the band.
Right.
And my parents were kind of like, yeah, whatever you think, if you can,
Sure.
It was more like, yeah, try it out, see what happens, kind of thing.
Right.
Because you can always go back to school.
Of course.
And Chad's mom was, obviously down because Shai Hulud already. And
Sure. She had seen like, oh, I get, because I think
she
that's
kind of got it.
Right. I think that's the most difficult thing for parents to understand is like what do you mean you're stopping to do this thing, to do this, like I always love the question of just like, well, how successful can this be?
Yeah.
Like how big can this be really? And like
that was one of the questions from our parents. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
And because I mean, for them, they're looking at like the Rolling Stones and like these massive things, and you're just in all of our collective heads, we're like, we're never gonna get there.
Yeah.
Like that's never gonna be us. Like, right. But then you have to like. There's no way that you can be like, oh, whatever, the biggest band in your head, where it's just like, oh yeah, like you've heard of Blink-182, right, Mom? No, of course not. Like that doesn't make any sense to them
Especially
either.
not then.
No, and they're like, so you're trying to have this serious like future conversation where it's just like, you have no idea what I'm talking about at all, and to put that on hold to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think Richard and Stephanie did a fine job of convincing.
Yeah.
And that was at the time where they were doing their whole deal with MCA Records and stuff.
Right.
So there was a potential future in it, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's multiple people investing in this thing,
Yeah.
in the label, and then in turn, obviously, you guys.
Yeah.
When during that process, obviously after, and then once the self-titled record came, and because I'm sure it's like I don't care who you are during that process, it will seem you'll feel disconnected. Mm-hmm. You'll feel like you're a part of this for lack of a better term machine. Like when did you at that point or during any juncture where it's like you felt like you were kind of going through the motions and it felt just weird and surreal, and like it doesn't even have to be in a bad sense, but just like within that journey where it was like.
Well, I think definitely once we got signed on the label, like we were having all these people coming out to our shows, like all the label people,
right,
from MCA.
Sure.
So we were meeting this person, and this is your marketing guy, and this is this guy, and this is that guy, and it was like, this is crazy, like.
Right.
I still live at home right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Let me pull the curtain back. Let me show you what I got back here.
Yeah, we were playing in New York City, and I remember, like, signing our upstream deal to MCA for the self-titled, and after, like, sitting, I think it was Irving Platt or Bowery Ballroom or something in New York City.
Sure.
In, like, this dark, like, upstairs, like, the bar area. And we didn't even have a manager yet.
I was going to say, because you guys navigated all this on your own, which that's hard.
We didn't get the manager until, I think, the first MCA.
The first MCA,
release.
yeah.
After.
Right, after, yeah.
Because I remember, like, Gary Ashley, who was our A&R guy for that record, was talking to Rick DeVoe.
Okay.
He's like, you got to watch this band and blah, blah, blah. So yeah. But yeah, so we were doing it all on our own up until that point.
Which I'm sure is extremely, like that was probably extremely stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had, Andrew Ellis, our booking agent, who still is.
Right.
He was kind of like our acting manager at the time.
Sure, yeah.
So he kind of had, like, a lawyer buddy come and, like, read things over. And,
right. You weren't in a wild, but it was definitely still, like, a lot of external things coming on you at once.
For sure.
And so, what I find interesting, too, and obviously the your career arc, as it were, is because obviously pop punk has gone through so many different renaissances and, highs and lows. But essentially, it is, defined by the fact that it's like, this is music that you should get into when you're young, and at some point you should eventually grow out of. Like that's just the, general conception of what it should be. And so it's funny for you guys existing in what you've had too, where it's like, well, we still feel passion for this music and obviously still enjoy it. But, eschew that convention with other people being like, oh, yeah, like, oh, that's cute, Newfound Glory. Yeah, I remember them. That was cute. That's cute you're still doing that.
And people, like, love to come and say that, like...
Totally.
Oh, we used to listen to you guys so much in high school. I used to get so much asked when I played your records for chicks. And it's like, dude, well... And I'm always just like, well, I'm glad I could still make you feel young, like...
Right. I mean, is that... I presume, like, especially people that are older, like, that... You, for lack of a better term, you're a nostalgia act. Not in a way like a nostalgia act that like tours, county fairs or something like that. But people are coming, you have your audience that obviously is that has just got into you, and then you have the mixture of people who are just, going to see you guys based on nostalgia-based reasons. And so like, for you yourself, where does most of the enjoyment kind of come from now from creating this type of stuff?
I think it's definitely seeing the new faces.
Yeah.
In the young, seeing it's not all older people at our shows, like chilling, drinking beer.
Sure.
Like we still have crazy shows, and it's all young kids wearing Story So Far shirts and wearing Man Overboard shirts and Wonder Years and like all that stuff. And like we've been able to stay relevant because I think is because we are still like just normal dudes.
Yeah.
And we started when we were young, so we're still young.
Yeah.
Ish.
Right.
We're
we've
been around a long time.
Right.
But we're still like, and the fact that when we tour, we try to bring fresh new bands and stuff that,
Right.
I don't know. I think I definitely feel really lucky because I definitely don't feel that when I go on tour oh man, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Like,
Right.
you know.
Which is good. I mean, because it's good that you actually ask yourself that question, because it's like you do arrive at a point where once you've done something for a long period of time, there comes that conversation in your own head where it's just like, I feel like you know, like you shake it up or reinvent yourself or whatever. Like you always have that feeling, and so it's like it's good that you actually ask yourself that question, because a lot of people, I think, you know, they don't, and they end up doing something, especially from a musical outlet perspective, where it's something that, you know, I mean, writing songs as you do it for so long, especially in the context of what you're doing, it gets easier. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're challenging yourself, obviously, but, you know, you're like, okay, like we can put this together.
We try to make every record different and still stick to what our fans want from us.
Of course, right.
You know, so we're always struggling internally, like, oh man, I really want to...
I wish we could really challenge them, like, completely, like, throw all conventions aside.
And we have, though. Like, we had our record Coming Home.
That bummed a lot of people out.
It bummed a lot of people out then. But now everybody's like, oh, that's my favorite record. Why don't they do that again?
Of course.
Everything now is like all about Coming Home. And it's like, well, where were you when that record came out?
Of course.
Like, that's my favorite record.
Totally.
You know? And I think that if it was received better, I think we would have maybe expanded on that.
Of course.
But it wasn't. And at the time, you're like, oh, well, shit, this is our favorite record and no one cares, really.
Right.
So let's just go back to... Let's just go back to the roots and just like have fun and not care.
Of course.
And not have to worry about like trying to reinvent ourselves or whatever. And,
right.
Like, but still not sounding the same.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, as an individual, it's different than obviously from a band perspective, because it's like, you definitely have to push yourself, but not to the point of where it's like you said, you're completely alienated. Because no band sets out with the idea. It's like, I mean, some bands do. Yeah. Like, I can't wait to bum out the kids that got into us in our first record.
Yeah, I can name like 5 right now that do that purposely.
Yeah. Which, you know, they may have more clout within their musical scene, so to speak, or whatever. But yeah, your point's well taken.
Where it's like, do you remember that you were a pop punk band? Okay.
Right. Which is true. And I mean, it's like, there's a lot of that.
Or do you remember that you were in a pop punk band? That's how you started?
Right.
Before you were in this big indie rock band? I'm not going to name names.
No. There's definitely, and I think that's obviously what attracts people that are, you know, whatever, 25 plus. They look at what New Found Glory is, and obviously all the individuals that comprise that band, and be like, oh, like they haven't, you know, changed their spot, so to speak. It's like you said, you know, you're obviously just an older version of yourself, like, but you know, you haven't turned your back on anything. Like, there's been no, you know, like huge, like, oh yeah, I remember when we did that. We're not doing that ever again, or whatever. Because there is that. And I think that's like the whole growing out of pop punk, where it's like it does frustrate, I mean, especially just like a music fan, where it's like you can't look at what you listened to when you were 15, 16, 17 years old and be like, that's stupid. Like that, I just feel like that's just like, it's so short-sighted. It's like, well, that made you listen to what you're listening to now. Like, you can't, when you disavow that, you're like, you know, trying to erase history, and that's dumb. Like, no one could do that.
That's just dumb.
Yeah, it's just dumb. I will go on record saying that's just dumb. This is a very random question, but something that I've personally always been conscious of every time I've played in front of audiences. The shirt you wear, especially from a frontman perspective, you always wear good shirts. I've noticed, in the sense of, when I define good shirts, in the sense of like, you know, it's easy for you to throw on a shirt of, you know, a said band you're on tour with, or band that is like extremely relevant right now. Yeah. But, you know, like you joked around mentioning Zoinks earlier, where it's just like, because I define you as a nerd, and this is just I'm putting this on you, but it seems that you're conscious about that decision about what you wear, like the shirts that you're like putting out there to kids, being like, you know, the 4 kids that are looking and being like, oh wow, like Jordan's wearing that. What is that a band? Like, so I presume that goes. Does that thought go through your head?
It definitely does. Okay. I mean, I want to like represent the bands that I loved growing up and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
You know, and also too, like especially like if I'm on tour with a band and I like that band.
Right.
I want to.
Yeah. Support,
you know, and so I definitely like think about it. You know, not too hard. I have like I have my tour shirts, which is the same 4 shirts, and they rotate, so they get like the white. Right. The pits are like, I've washed them so much, and the pit smell does not come out.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's a rotating like 4 or 5 shirts.
Okay.
And then because I hate bringing a huge suitcase with me on tour.
Oh, it's the worst.
So I like to bring I pack, if I'm leaving for 2 months, I pack like a week's worth of clothes. And then my 4
Sure. Your staples.
stage shirts, and then
Right.
my 2 like stage pants,
Okay, yeah.
and then I just do laundry.
As a fellow nerd who has put thought into this, where I'm just like, okay, like I'm playing for this audience, like, how about I wear a Neurosis t-shirt? Just like, they're like, what is that? I don't know what that It's like, yeah, there's that. I feel like, to me, when people do that, I believe that they truly do care about, like, I guess for lack of a better term, like advancing the, independent music genre as a whole, because it's like, like I said, for the 10 kids that are at your, whatever, 700 or 800 person show that are going to like take the time to be like, I wonder what that is. I'm going to look this up on Google. And whether or not they actually like it, they'll still be exposed to it.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah. Tattooing is obviously a huge part of your life now. And that's, when did that sort of kind of, manifest itself?
Probably it's been about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted...
Right, and you've had tattoos, obviously.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to learn how to do it, and I just never had the opportunity to. And then the opportunity came along a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Where I met, he was a great friend now. His name's Ian White. And he's in Nashville, and he was originally from Ohio, and he was on tour with... He used to tattoo the Hawthorne Heights guys. And
oh, sure.
I had met him briefly on their bus on Warped Tour once.
Okay.
And, talked for a couple minutes, it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
like a long
A tour
conversation.
interaction, right.
And then several years later, he was on tour with Bayside when they were opening up for us on a tour.
Okay.
And he was tattooing a couple of guys on their bus, and he was on tour for a few days.
Sure.
And he tattooed me, and we were talking, and I'm like, man, I've always wanted to learn. And, he knew that I did a lot of his art and stuff, and
Right.
done a lot of my band's t-shirts and, whatever.
Right.
And so I started talking to him, like, man, I would love to learn. And he's like, well, if you ever want to, I'm moving to Nashville, and if you ever want to come out and, whatever, I'll teach you. I was like, yeah. So I took that opportunity, and the first kind of lessons he gave me was he flew out to San Diego, stayed with me for a couple weeks, and I think I tattooed him in my kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he's like, all right, I'm going to show you a few basic things, and then you're going to tattoo me.
Yeah, yeah. Not even throwing you into an orange.
Nope.
Just go on me.
Yeah. And he has like a portrait of me, like of like a drawing that I did like on his shoulder.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I did a little coffee cup on it, like his arm and stuff.
Okay,
but
perfect.
Things like that. And then from there, it kind of turned into this back and forth thing where I'd go to Nashville for a few weeks. And
Got it.
so it was never really consistent up until last year.
Yeah.
Moved the whole family to Nashville.
Right.
Helped Ian. He was at a really amazing shop called Black 13, which is like hugely popular.
Sure.
And he was there and then left to do his own thing.
Okay.
So I was learning at Black 13.
Sure.
And drawing there and talking to the other artists there and hanging out. And then when he went to open his own place, we made the move out there and helped him open the new place.
Got it.
So I was like, I was the apprentice for a year.
Right.
I painted the whole place, like...
Yeah.
But it was like this... It wasn't the typical... Because I hear horror stories of
course,
artists that were apprenticed and, like, the person that was teaching them, like, just treated them like shit.
Of course, yeah. You apprenticed for like 3 years, and it's just like, I didn't even learn anything.
Like...
Just give me my ink. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Or tattooing, like, somebody, and then, like, it's a sweaty girl, and, like, licking the sweat off the seat, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Ian never made me do that. And
Right.
And I respect him more because of that.
Of course. I mean, that's like hazing, and that's like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of those old school guys would be like, well, that wasn't an apprenticeship then, because you have to, like...
Yeah. You eat
dog
shit,
shit and
right,
whatever.
right.
And like, what does that have to do with tattooing? Nothing.
Right.
Ian's a great guy, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
And is that something that you foresee yourself like transitioning into, as far as just like, well, this is something you can do obviously, for years and years to come, as opposed to just like, oh, like the band is my sole identity.
Yeah.
Like, so
Well, it is.
I mean, it is. I mean, it is, but obviously you can express yourself.
Even if I don't want it to be, it is.
Right. I mean, like the people that get tattooed for you right now, I mean, by you right now,
Yeah.
I mean, it's solely, like, do you find it's 90% of people that know?
Yeah.
That? Okay.
Yeah. Which is great, and they, because of obviously social media,
Yeah, of course.
Instagram and Twitter
course.
and stuff, and people know that I've been learning, and I have a certain style of tattoo that I like to do and
Sure.
stuff. So it's not for everybody.
Right.
But yeah, but it's been awesome because it's helped me, even if it's from the band, like
Right.
because they know the band,
Of course.
and they want like Newfound Glory lyrics
Right.
with like some weird creature.
Right.
Like it's still allowing me to practice and
Of course.
keep it going. And we're trying to open up a shop here.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah, but that's something that obviously like you can, you know, feel yourself pivoting into.
Yeah.
In the future, as opposed to just like you said, where it's like, okay, well, Newfound Glory breaks up next year, where it's like, well, what do I do with my creative outlet? Like, I've got nothing.
And I'm definitely self-conscious about, you know, because there's guys that, like Ian, who taught me, he didn't open his own place till after he's been tattooing for 10 years.
Right.
And I always have this, like, battle where it's like, should I be really trying to open a shop?
Right.
When I've only been tattooing for not even 2 years. Like,
right.
And then I talk to my close friends like Ian or like Tim, who I was just with in Arizona at his shop and stuff. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, you should do it. Like, what you want to do. And he's like, and as soon as you need hands to help you build walls, I'll be down there to help you. Like,
yeah.
And
the
that's
support,
and
right.
And that's what I love about the, you know, the guys that I ended up
aligning
myself with the tattoo in the tattoo world.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Supportive and
again, it's akin to obviously independent music, where it's like you feel like, you know, there's a support system. There's something that exists there where it's like you plug yourself into and you're like, oh, this is great. This feels very familiar.
Yeah.
And last sort of thing that I wanted to hit on was the you know, the idea of obviously, you know, like you mentioned earlier, obviously being a father and like having these two diametrically opposed worlds, because like, I mean, people that have never toured don't understand the concept of like, you know, when you come home from tour, you know, this, like my wife always jokes around where it's like when I was touring regularly, where she's like, I'm gonna give you like a 2 or 3 day buffer, like for you to come home.
I get a buffer usually,
right? And it's like
but I dive right in, man.
Like
I love being home.
Yeah.
You know, tour's great too.
Of
but
course.
I miss the family. I don't know if you were finished with your.
Yeah, no. It's no, but I mean, you're that's exactly what I do. I start you off on something and you go with it. But no, that's perfect.
But Mandy commends me because I dive right into being into dad mode, and husband mode and stuff, and we try our best on tour. You know, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's
very
hard to. I miss the kids like crazy and stuff, and miss Mandy and everything. And we have Skype and stuff, but it's not the same.
Right, of course.
But they'll come and they come and visit once in a while here and there.
Right,
on
when
tour.
they can.
But yeah, I just dive right in.
Right. I mean, obviously it feels right from a father perspective, but do you have the desire to be like, I'd like to not tour, and not even from just like a, you know, dickish like, oh whatever, like I can't wait to not play in a band, but just like I would like to not spend that much time on the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely feel that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I could speak for the other guys in my band that have kids.
Sure.
I mean, even if they wouldn't say it out loud,
right?
Because they have to portray whatever they want to portray.
Of course.
I know that they're thinking it.
Right. Well, because
we talk about it.
Right.
Like,
right. I know they think about that because we've had those discussions before. Yeah. Well, because there's definitely like,
but they know it's like this is like our livelihood and like why we have the things we have and why we're able to, you know, all that stuff.
Right. Because
it's a double-edged sword.
Totally. It affords you the freedom that you obviously have when you are not on tour and when you're not in a creative process. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're just like, well, that's also immediately torn away from me when I have to go out for, you know, 2-3 months out of the year, or for 2 or 3 months at a time. And it's like, yeah, there's definitely.
But then it's like you think about it and you're like, oh well, it's only 2 months,
right?
And because when I'm home, I'm home all day,
right, 24/7, right. Yeah. I am available from this perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I feel spectacular about this. Do you feel like we've covered all your bases, so to speak?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you spending the time and hanging out.
Yeah, for sure.
So there was Jordan. There he was. There he is. He will forever live in your head after you've listened to this interview. But I'd like to thank him and my good friend Mandy for inviting me over to their house and meeting their cute kids and all that other fun stuff. Visit the website, 100wordspodcast.com. Visit propertyofzach.com. I didn't plug them at the beginning, but they're cool. They're fine with it. Just visit them. Everybody will be happy. And I can tell when you visit them, okay? I get like an email notification. The editor, as always, is Tom Richfield. And I've got some other amazing guests coming up. I'll give you a little tease. Next week we have Ross from Ceremony on the show. And then we have Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids and a bunch of other fun stuff. So subscribe, party into the future. All right? Be safe until next week. Bye, everybody.